Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures that Outperform. I'm so glad you could join us. We're moving on to episode 2 of the Art of Organizational Design. We're going to be looking at operational considerations. Last week, we actually went through different design models that you can use. And in role 3, we're going to do role clarity. And we're going to move on here into the 4th episode on governance and continuous improvement. So stay tuned, folks. We're going to have a good show. I always start by introducing Terry Mays, who's just awesome, certified culture engineer, knows culture like the back of her hand, is able to use it as a tool to drive high performance. I'm Frank Wander. I'm the founder and CEO of People Productive, and I'm glad you're here to join us.
Yes, we're glad you're here.
We're very glad you're here. Last week we did start talking about the art of organizational design. We took a quick look at different organizational models that you could use. And we went through the rationale behind different org models, why they work, what benefits you get from them, and why would you use one versus the other. And we said we'd leave the operational considerations to this week. And so here, when you have an organizational model, you've got essentially an interaction model. And here we're going to talk about how your organization will interact with the business. Because there are, obviously shared roles and responsibilities, not only within IT, but between IT and their business partners. And so let's take a look at this. On the left, you'll see we have the business unit, and on the right, you'll see we have the technology organization. And to begin with, the business unit has to collaborate with that org model and all the roles and responsibilities in IT in a very deep and meaningful way. Likewise, the technology group is going to have to coordinate with that business plus all the peer IT areas. So you're going to be really collaborating like this. It goes up and down, and you should understand that when you're doing an org design, you want to minimize the number of boundaries people have to go over to get work done. The fewer boundaries people cross, the better. There's no avoiding real cross-functional collaboration, but that's what this is. How do you do it? How do you design it? And so that's the first thing to keep in mind. It's at the top because that's the most important.
Yes, I love this chart because it really shows the nice handshake that happens when you embed technology into the business unit and how you're actually working together to collaborate on solutions that you're developing. So it's not just a technology solution or the prospective business unit's solution, it's our solution. And this is how you make that conversation happen, by having these handshakes and handoffs where you agree on certain things and then everybody understands their role and what they're responsible for and the part that they play. And so when you look at the business vision and establishing that and coming up with the investment dollars for different projects or solutions, that really lives on the requesting unit. And then IT is there to understand that business vision and then bring their solution. How can technology help solve this problem? And what is it going to cost to actually solve that problem?
Yeah. Deeply collaborative every step of the way. So once the business and IT have come to an agreement on what's going to be done, what it actually costs to get it done, then, of course, the business is going to fund the budget. And, the IT organization is going to manage the development of these services and products and the IT budget and be reporting back regularly to their partner. And that's the beauty of having an embedded model where IT is embedded in the business. They're always part of the conversation. There's no mystery as to what's going on, what the money's being invested in, how much, and where they are in terms of the budget cycle.
Right. And you always have people that are knowledgeable of both sides of the equation, right? So you've got to have people that have deep knowledge and understanding of the business functions, but you also need technical folks that have deep knowledge and understanding so they can bring it all together. And so that's where the resources come in. You want to make sure that your teams are fully staffed with the right business roles and the right technology roles so that you're bringing IT people and business people together and you blur that line. The goal of this is to really blur that line between business and IT because you want You want there to be such an integration that the team becomes highly functional because you realize we can't move forward without one side of this equation. We can't leave one side of the equation out and make decisions. And this is key because there have been some really big pitfalls in projects and different solutions where one side has left the other side out, and now you've got a mess to clean up later. So the more you can stay in lockstep and make sure that everybody is involved in the decision-making process, that we all understand the problem that we're trying to solve, and we're actively engaging technology solutions to try to determine which is going to be the best solution to fit this business need.
Yeah, and you're not just collaborating, you really are one team. You've
Right.
got to operate like one team. IT just happens to be the automated piece of the business. It is the business. It's the automated
Exactly.
piece. It really is one team, and these boundaries should be there in the most minimal level, not as separators, but as things that really clarify roles and responsibilities. Because you're one team,
Right.
and on that one team, the business case ultimately is being driven by the business. They have the most intimate knowledge of the business, the marketplace. They're working with clients. They have to drive the business case. And IT's got to very deeply understand that because they're going to drive the execution, what development methodology gets chosen to actually deliver those business benefits. And so it's very important.
Very important. And that goes hand in hand with business requirements. So you've got to have a clear, good foundational set of business requirements, but you also need to know the system requirements and the design that's going to meet those business requirements. And often you end up with business requirements that are trying to stand in the place of system requirements. And that just really does not work well. You really do need to have both because you end up with this solution that meets all the business functions. But in terms of performance, for example, it suffers or it lags. And that's because you didn't have system requirements and you didn't design the solution with that in mind, or security requirements, for example. All of those things are things that you have to consider, and you can't just look at it from one perspective and not the other.
Yeah, everybody's got to understand the big picture and how it works. I think that's absolutely imperative. And regardless of what methodology you're using, you could be doing waterfall, you could be doing agile. Some business or product owner in agile is coming up with the requirements of what they're going to do for that sprint. And you on the IT side are really turning that into, how this is going to integrate into the system. And so this has to happen regardless of what methodology you choose. On the business side, they've got to make sure this stuff is what they're doing is fully in alignment with all the different areas on the business side. And on the tech side, they're enforcing the standards, best practices, and sharing because they too have to embrace whatever the broader IT organization is doing and make sure they're following those practices and standards and integrating well into the broader IT structure that exists there.
Right. And if you're doing all of these things well, by the time you get to this next step, it's just literally a sign off
Yeah.
because all the testing and the sign offs that happened on the product side, on the business side for the product, as well as all the implementation and maintenance, it becomes a little bit more seamless. And now it's not so much of a shocker that we get all the way to the end, or we've made it through several sprints and we realize this is not the right solution. This goes back to developing those business requirements and system requirements and making sure that we're in alignment at every step in the process so
Yeah.
that we don't end up with those surprises at the end, and we're able to implement solutions on time and on budget. We don't have a whole lot of defects that we're trying to fix in production. That is like one of the
That's
worst.
always a nightmare. Oh
You
man.
know, you know that the solution is full of defects, but you need to implement on time, so you implement it. But then you spend the next 3-4 months just solving bugs that could have been solved in a testing phase.
Oh
That
yeah. And it costs 10 times more money to fix it now. It's in production.
absolutely. And it
It's
runs
insane.
people in the ground. It absolutely runs people in the ground because now you're in a serious critical production environment trying to make
Firefighting.
changes very quickly. And you know how people make mistakes when they're stressed. and they're trying to rush. And so it just creates a cycle that you want to avoid
Yeah,
if at all possible. And you do that through developing those business cases, making sure that people
right.
understand their role, making sure you've got the right people in the right roles. That's another key point of just ensuring that you're producing the best quality product you can by checking all the boxes up front and not
Yeah.
waiting until the end to say, oh, this is not at all the solution that we thought we were getting.
And those implementations where somebody says the date matters, put it in, only exist because this isn't happening. In a truly collaborative environment where it's one team, people know exactly where things are, and they would never decide to throw something in,
Right.
ever. I mean, all you got to do is watch that laughing guy video on YouTube. Let's go to production.
Yeah.
That's hysterical, and those disasters do happen.
Yes,
It's
they
so
do.
funny. I
Yes, they
talked to
do.
one that was so bad when I came in to do a turnaround where the organization had put in a large solution that went out to a bunch of customers, and it took them just absolutely months to clean it up, months. And they fired a bunch of people. That's how I ended up there. But interesting, this stuff really does happen. So you must have this one team. You got to have openness, candor, great culture here. We're not talking about culture in this episode, but this is a collaborative culture, what you see here, with
Right.
real joint ownership of everything.
Right. And
And
this
so,
is how you create that high performing culture.
yeah,
Our show is all about creating cultures that outperform. This is almost like a checklist of things. If you
it
do
is.
these things, this absolutely will have you in a culture where people outperform the rest of the organization. And people will be coming to you asking, how are you able to get your teams to do so well, to perform so well? This is why when people have
Yeah,
clear roles and responsibilities, and it's not a us and a them approach to work, but it's ours. And we each have a part to play, and I understand my part to play. So now I can rely on my team. That's another big one. You've got to be able to rely on your team. You don't have
yeah,
to do everything yourself. You can't fill every role yourself, but you've got to have some really high confidence in the competency of the people that are on the team with you. But when you do, it gives a relaxation and a freedom that you get to just focus in on the things that you're responsible for and know that each person is doing their very best. They're trying to make sure that they're delivering as high quality of a product as possible. And when that happens, it's almost magical.
it
It's such
is.
a stress-free environment when it's like that, because you're not just, running around checking and checking and checking the checker. You're really
Yeah.
able to focus in and perform your specific job functions well.
Yeah, it's that true, really deeply collaborative culture, very open, honest, lots of candor. People are comfortable speaking up. That's what it happens when you design an organization that's embedded in another organization. You operate as one team. You solve all these issues. And that's why, having one of these embedded organizations where part of IT is sitting at the table with the business. They're part of the business, as they should be. It's the automated part of the business. And you look at this next one, the business owns obviously managing business products and services, and IT has very clear ownership over the whole technology portfolio. Hopefully, they're doing application portfolio management. They own the infrastructure, whether it's cloud, colo, they have their own data center. They're managing all the application services. They're doing the vendor management to make sure everything keeps running. And it's clear to everybody that's who owns which pieces of it.
Right. And there's no confusion. So, one
Yeah.
of the biggest ways to slow down and derail a project is to have a bunch of confusion around who owns what. And then you have people saying, well, that's not my area. It's that person's area. No, it's this person's area. And you just kind of pass the buck around. But when you
Yeah.
agree up front and you understand who owns what, who's managing what, it becomes easy. It's such a better way to work and perform and to
So
actually
much better.
manage teams. Right. And the last piece here is just about assigning product owners. So business business teams really own the products. IT
Mhm.
is really assigning those system owners to work in collaboration with the product owners. But when you have those teams that can work together and there's a cohesiveness there, there's collaboration, it's just a much smoother functioning team
Oh,
because
totally.
now you can groom that backlog quickly. It doesn't
Mhm.
take a long time. You're spending less time in all of your planning processes because you've got the right people having the conversation and
And they're
you've got
part of the conversation ongoing. They know. They're already
right.
halfway through the conversation when it starts, you know?
Right. They've been working together. And once you develop a relationship with people that you're working with, and there's an ease that comes when you're having conversations because you know that person, that other person knows you. And it's not to say that you have to be best friends, but you do have some, like, there's an ease that comes. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. There is an ease that comes, and you
Yep.
can probably see it in the show. There's an ease that comes from Frank and I because we've been doing this for a while now. And so we kind of toss things back and forth
Yeah.
with very little effort in it. It kind of just happens naturally.
Yes. Yeah. We don't have to have huge planning meetings to run a
No,
show. We're
we
able to
don't have a
jump right
script,
in.
believe it or not.
Yeah. And so, hey, let's move on because the shared ownership, I think this interaction model right here is very good. And what you
Yes,
see is somebody clearly owns each piece, whatever life cycle development you're doing, each step, however you lay your methodology out, there is an owner and a collaborator. And you've got
right,
to make it clear in the flow of the work who owns what and who collaborates. Because you're dealing with real cross-functional models. If you're going to be one team, the ownership has to be clear. We're going to be going over role clarity in the next episode. Like, how do you really get there? What else do you have to do? Because there's tons of people, and within each one of these organizational units, even within IT, there are a lot of different roles and responsibilities. And we're going to talk about how do you really get down to having a model that works. But you need something like this that makes clear really who the owner is and who the collaborator is, because then responsibilities are rock solid, Tara?
right. Right. You don't want there to be a whole lot of confusion here. I know there's this nice gray line in the middle, but
Yeah.
you don't want it to be gray. You want it to be kind of black and white. So just like in the boxes where it shows who owns what, you
Maybe
really
we
do
should
want it to be black
maybe
and
we
white.
should remove the gray. You're right. The blur
I think
factor.
it's
Oh well.
very I think it's very fitting. I think it helps illustrate how important it is to make sure that what who owns what is black and white. It's very clear.
Yeah.
There's no confusion around it, who the business owners are, who the technology owners are, and who comes together. So whenever there's a decision that needs to be made about funding or scope or design or
Yeah.
construction, it all goes through the same people. You just have a different role that you're playing in the organization. And I've been on teams where this has been clearly defined. And I'm telling you, it is just easy.
Much easier.
It's so much easier, so much less overhead, so much less stress when
Yeah.
everybody is involved in making this decision together. It's not us and them. It's we made this decision together. We were successful together. That is such a beautiful feeling.
It is. And you know that the bottom line there, which is business solutions come from a shared vision and have shared ownership. That's absolutely true. If the vision isn't clear to both parties, some of the design decisions are not going to be right. If they don't have shared ownership, then they're not going to be functioning as one team. And if either side fails in communication or execution, both lose
We
because you're
all
one
do.
team, one business. It's a business.
That's
That's
right.
it. And so let's go on to the very last slide here. We're going to chat to quickly, some of the rationale and benefits for getting this clarity of how your organization plugs into the broader enterprise. Give all leaders a voice by defining the decision-making processes. This is where things slow down just constantly. I see slow decision making when we're in the market working with companies. And it's because some of the roles and responsibilities haven't been clear. The decision making mechanisms haven't been defined. Like, how do you get a decision made? Some are very simple, some are a matter of empowerment, some are having real governance mechanisms for that type of decision so people know who to go to and how to get that decision made. And they're not off gunslinging.
That's right. And then you want to make sure that your technology investments are directly aligned with enterprise strategy. So you don't want to be spending money on people or on resources that don't align with strategy. You've got to make sure that you're spending the money wisely, that you're investing the people in the right roles, in the right part of the organization. All of those things matter. And so this investment that you're making, it although it says IT investment, it's not just the technology piece, it's the people piece as well.
Yeah. And listen, there are investments where only IT people are working on that investment. You might be moving to the cloud and maybe you're going to migrate out of a data center. You're going into the cloud. It's almost all technology work that has to be done. You're doing it for a business reason. You should never be doing it because there's some IT rationale. If that has not been fully explained and supported by the business as a priority, given all the other priorities, then you're doing it. You don't have IT projects. You have business projects which have an enormous IT element to them. But everything is a business project. Everything. It doesn't,
Everything.
don't ever make that confusion. I know for years people go, oh, we got a bunch of IT projects. You better not. You better have a lot of business projects because you're not
Right.
having the conversations.
Because that's what technology is there for, to solve business problems. So anytime we're implementing new solutions, it's because there's some business problem that we're implementing technology solutions to solve.
Yeah. Now, ensure investments are needed by looking across IT for an existing alternative first. Absolutely, because you're plugging into the broader enterprise and you got to be collaborating not only with the business, but across all of IT if you're in a large organization. And there are many large organizations. And so, if there is already a very, very good solution, then, this is part of managing enterprise expenses. You want to look for alternatives first. And if there's not a good reason not to use it, you should go with that.
Right. And I think these next two really do go together. So I'm going
Yeah,
to cover them both at the same time. But
perfect.
decision making should really be transparent. And we've talked about this many times about
Yeah,
how the right people are in the room making the decisions. It's not just one group versus the other. And when you have exceptions, when there are times where there really is a true exception to the rule, there's a formalized process in place for that. And there are controls to make sure that although we may not have been able to follow our normal decision making process, people stay in the loop and they don't feel like, well, IT
yeah,
went off and made this decision without us. And now we don't agree. You don't have to have that if you constantly keep people in the loop and in the know of what's happening, even when there are exceptions to us all being able to come together and make a decision. Maybe, whatever those exceptions are, we still keep people informed.
yeah. And look, the last bullet, it goes without saying, want to make sure that whatever you're doing, however you're interacting, and where those responsibilities do fall on one organization versus the other, make sure you're in compliance with all the policy standards and procedures, which is obviously cut off here. So that is really how this works and operates. Um, you've got to absolutely enjoy the next episode, hopefully, with us, which is going to be on role clarity. You got to get role clarity right. And role clarity isn't just the roles, it's these detailed responsibilities. We'll be talking about that in the next episode. That's how you prevent conflict in an organization because people don't have to fight over turf. You don't have two people thinking they own the same thing. That's bad. So you can also please remember to join us for this fourth one, which is governance and continuous improvement. Organizations are evolving and people throw out an org chart and some roles and things evolve and they never go back and continue the refinement. Let's talk about the importance of that in episode 4. That's what's on the agenda. Look, we ran a little long today, but this is important. And we very much thank you for coming and joining us here. We're every Wednesday, 3 p.m. We have another episode. You know what's coming. Feel free to join us. We have a great set of shows stacked up this year. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's about building, great improvements in how you operate and function in 2024. So you are that truly high performing culture.
Yes.
So take
Thank
care.
you so much for